back with another video. I wanted to say, so in the last video, I was talking a little bit about, I was referencing George Floyd. And the reason I did so was to say that I'm from the area where George Floyd was slain. And I can say that that area where he was slain at, there was some stuff in the air before he was slain. I would say I experienced, so before George Floyd was slain, I was I lived in that area. That's where I lived most of my life, in that area. But I know that I was having really wicked things going on in my life. Actual persecution, real persecution, that is imminent threat and loss of safety, and also loss of property, having not offended anyone or injured anyone, assaulted anyone, meant anyone anything. I was targeted by I was targeted as a civilian, in a very sophisticated, dangerous, and a daunting way that if I won't, it wouldn't be appropriate for camera to convey some of my experiences, but it would be like the type of stuff that you would, it'd be near about what you hear about in different media as the worst things that a person can experience, different iterations of that drawn out as like a saga, and like phases, long phases. And not being affiliated with anything or participating in anything legal or illegal that would constitute a lifestyle as a non-civilian. I was not engaged as that, but I experienced that. So just to say that that was me in my life. Now I'm about 5 miles away from where we lost George Floyd, and that type of stuff goes on all the time, all over the United States and the world. But for me myself, it was very real, and you had some thick vibes going on for me. Now at that time, I learned something in reading the works of Arthur Avon, which is that if you have a musical instrument and it fasts, that means that you're not touching a musical instrument. That is inauspicious. That means it does not suggest good fortune to let something like an instrument sit around lonely. You have a lot of lonely guitars in this world. You have a lot of lonely instruments in this world. When people put their hands on an instrument, the guitar is there's something of blessedness that happens when we pick up an instrument. So to leave an instrument sitting around is just, it doesn't forebode well. In the past, when we had more bookstores, there were metrics that could be appreciated, that the presence of bookstores in a city, a vicinity, a municipality, it actually alters certain metrics of outcomes and activities that would shift and skew just simply based on the presence of a bookstore. Statistically, that's significant, and it corresponds and correlates. It doesn't necessarily cause different outcomes directly, but it correlates and attends, and is a precedent, antecedent of and is a antecedent. A precedent and precedent to and attendant of different realities and dynamics, economically and socially, would be the presence of bookstores before the proliferation of online shopping. I would extrapolate that the presence of music venues, that is, especially venues for teaching music, programs in school, music, so forth. A lot of people, you wouldn't appreciate how much music has benefited you. Do you know that you may not have got your ass robbed sometime, somehow, somewhere, or received, like, so you're an adult now, and you lived to experience the blessings of being a mature adult. Do you not know that you may not have actually had that opportunity, or the opportunity the way you did, if it wasn't for certain sports programs, certain after-school programs, certain activities, certain music programs that are constructive, things that would give people things to do that are interesting, challenging, different than having time on their hands like we would in nature. I said in the video that I met a high-ranking, nondescript person of some type of government post at a gas station and talked to him for a couple hours on end. I wasn't disclosed any like compromising information, but I was privy to insights and understandings and approaches that would be different than what a civilian would come across. And he said that you have no concept of what life is outside of the amenities of what's appreciated as civil society, that is feral human activity. You do not have a reference for that, even going in the very vicinity we were sitting in. He's like, yeah, these used to be glaciers around here, and the environment would be very different. But life would have been there wouldn't be you wouldn't have a context to appreciate what life would be like without civilization. We as civilized people wouldn't have a context for what civilization would be like without activities that is constructive, productive things for people to do. Yeah, we got up and down the neighborhoods this long, and we managed to stay out of trouble this far. But we may not have gotten to do so if there weren't other things that were engaging people differently. We don't know what circumstances we were prevented by the presence of certain constructive things for people and children to do, no less than musical instruments, sport activities, hobbies, things like this. But from that standpoint, instruments change things and affect things in an environment. Music does it, period, in general, but especially instruments. But at that time, I didn't have the you need a certain amount of, so some things are take like a certain amount of like the scientific word would be libido, but I don't like things that are scientific because they are a educated bias, educated for lack of a better word. They are a sophisticated bias, presumption, appreciating a singular thing as its similarity to and presence and being constituted as potentially a member of something different. So because the group is this, the individual has to be this. That's a lot of what science is. Or you could maybe say it goes the other way. So deductive would be to go from group to individual. Inductive would be to go from individual to group. But that's still it's still conjecture, and there's a gray area for probability, statistically speaking, that blunders a lot of things and actually makes things redundant and actually at a certain point dispense with as certain as probability in sciences. But but so the word would be libido, but a lot of things they do take a certain, like joie de vivre would be a stronger word, like maybe more poetic from French. The sensation of living, the joy of living. I had an uncle who was like a bohemian. Actually, a lot of my life became a lot like my uncle because he was poetic and creative and artistic. But so far as his own life went, like at family get-togethers, at significant events, he would be very poetic. And he actually won a beautiful girlfriend from South America and had beautiful relation experiences with her where we were at, and then moved to the southern United States with her and had deep experiences with her and some of her adult children because of his poetry. It opened that up for him, and he was never trying to be famous with poetry, but it was just who he was. And he was also just a free thinker. And I said in another video, he once pondered, what if death means you simply cease to exist? No more nor less, you cease as existing. What would that mean about death, and what would that mean about life and what you have lived and what you have of life now? What would that mean? That was very deep. But sometimes when I took road trips with him, like to see family, like in the next town over, like a few hours away, something about getting on the highway with him, some of his humor in life, but just his attitude, you actually feel some of the joie de vivre of what it means to be alive, like the sensation of fun now. He'd been a cool uncle my whole life. He took me to do different things like fishing, which I deeply am thankful for those experiences that I had with him, but I actually regret some of the wicked things that I did to fish that were unnecessary, like fishing. Like I didn't do a lot of hunting when I was little, but I did a fair amount of fishing, and I was decent at it. My family's talented with stuff like that. My cousin was a tour on the Boundary Waters, and he was a gifted, brilliant outdoorsman. He had experiences that were otherworldly while in this life that he documented, but he also we lost him early, near around 40 years old. He was a man of mystery. He concealed a lot of what he did. I think he did maybe he did some things that were not safe. And so sometimes when it's so cool to be this mysterious person and you don't tell people your goings on, that can be dangerous. So we lost him early and don't actually know what happened. Part of it might be in his lifestyle about being a man of mystery, but he was actually a man of mystery and very talented around hunting and fishing. But I do regret some of my experiences around fishing, and I wouldn't take the life of an animal when I don't have to and inflict that type of brutality on an animal unnecessarily with the advantage of our human reason. I wouldn't do that. But sometimes leaving town with my uncle like that to do different things, when he would actually take an active interest in me, you actually get a sensation of fun and what it is to be alive. Ever so subtle, yet that poet. The realest kick, the realest thing, the most addictive thing, the realest kick is very subtle. Your first sip of coffee, your first sip of a wine cooler, which is very weak compared to other alcohol. I would say maybe some of your toke of tobacco, but it hasn't been like that for me for tobacco. Your first hit that connected with you, it's very subtle, but it's forceful, and that was him, the joy de vivre.